Hey there everybody, it's Mark Crowley. I'm back with another video. Today I'm returning to a concept that I tried, boy, it seems like almost 2 years ago now, in which I created my own origami paper and then folded something out of it. And I'm going to begin by taking a sheet of ordinary writing paper if you don't have access to origami paper, and if indeed you want to follow along with my idea of creating your own patterned paper. You can create a perfect square by folding one side of the paper against itself, like so, right? So that it's right up against that line. And then this part here becomes paper that you just want to trim away. So I'm going to try as carefully as I can to fold this back and line this up with that one line there. And if I take scissors and cut this away, you're going to end up with a perfect square, which is, of course, what you need when you're doing origami. Now, what I do very often, because I'm lazy and I can't find my scissors, or I just don't want to bother with scissors, is I just crease this extra hard and tear it off. Brutally rip it asunder. And I find that this actually creates a nice straight line if you have prepared it enough. Watch and see if I don't actually do a blunder and rip it up. Well, there we go. It turned out okay. So that shows you if you do prepare that fold enough, you can get a pretty straight line. So anyway, what I'm going to do now is switch from the origami idea to the creating a pattern idea. Give me just a second because I want to put some paper underneath this. I'm going to be using markers, and I don't want it to go through and stain the surface underneath too much. Alright, so I'm going to show you an approach that I've come up with for creating a patterned sheet of paper that involves three different colored markers. In my case, I've chosen a dark blue, a lighter blue, and then here, sort of more like a ochre, light brown kind of a color. And what I'm going to do is zoom in. Well, let me begin. I'll do it so that you can see the size in relation to the square itself, and then I'll zoom in so you can get a closer look at things. But I don't even know if the word pattern applies to this the way that I'm doing it, because I'm actually going to be spontaneously creating a series of shapes that have no fixed pattern to them at all, really. It's completely just off the cuff. I create something that sort of looks like a vaguely SpongeBob flower kind of a shape, and then I make lines on the outside of that. And I think what I'll do is I'll stop when I've done 3, right? There's 1, 2, 3 lines. And then I'm going to come over here and do more. Hang on a second, I'll refocus the camera. Alright, so I'm going to come over here and make another shape, and sort of the fun of this is the very idea that you don't know the shape before you do it almost. I find that there's something kind of therapeutic about this spontaneously made up pattern. I don't know, the word pattern doesn't seem right, does it? Because if it is, what should I say? Wallpaper? Wallpaperish thing. There is something sort of fun about not knowing what shape am I going to make next, and just letting your brain kind of do whatever it feels like doing, and little by little you begin to create these interesting sort of organic shapes. And you can see that I'm kind of spacing them out a little bit to create blank spaces between them. And those are going to get filled in with shapes that are made with the other colors of the marker. And I would say don't be afraid to go all the way off the edge of the paper, because indeed, you know, when you buy origami paper, the pattern will go to all 4 edges, and I don't know if there's any rhyme or reason to where it gets cut off. So what I'm going to do, actually, I'll show you how I might do that, is deliberately start one of the shapes over here on the edge. But I wonder if you'll agree, I wonder if it's just me who finds doing something like this kind of therapeutic, almost. You know, I do a lot of videos that are about how to draw this and, you know, how to make hyper-realistic that, and I thought it might be fun to do one where the pressure is off. I'm just sort of, it's like doodling, you know what I mean? You don't have to think about it so much. I'll do one more of these, and then I'm going to show you how I would switch to another color to start making this interesting wallpaper-ish thing. Now you could, you know, all of this is just of my own devising. You could stop at just 2 layers deep. You could go 4 layers deep. You could do whatever you want. It's entirely up to you. And of course you can just start with factory-made origami paper if you want to. But where's the fun in that? I'm going to switch now to my brown ochreish kind of a color. Whoops, that's the chisel point. I'm going to go back. And a lot of markers these days have brush points. I think it would be a little hard to work with a brush point to create this kind of stuff. And again, you could, if you wanted, with each change of color, you could make dramatically different shapes. I am choosing to stick with fairly similar, like I call them, these sort of SpongeBob flower type shapes. Now you see when I come to this, I'm having one go behind the other. I'm not afraid to have one touch. In fact, we want by the end to, at least with my idea, to have most of the white spaces get filled in. My feeling is that there is going to be something kind of satisfying about gradually taking this perfectly white sheet of paper and little by little filling it all the way in. Let's do a sort of a wormy one here. Why not? Gradually filling it in, and I suppose after this I may stop and show you how I would take the pale blue and make that the very last of the 3 colors that to me feels like the sort of background that gets pushed even further back, and there is sort of a logic there of saving your lightest color, in my case a pale blue, saving that as your final background. So let's see how this works out if I go back here and I do sort of a shape like that. And I fill that in. I don't know if this is actually lighter in terms of the, compared to the ochre color. It may be similarly dark, but it's certainly not as dark as the blue color, the first blue color that I used. Anyway, let me know what you think about this. These days, we all need something to calm us down. I thought something that we can kind of relax with artistically, and that's why I thought I would try this. Like I said, it sort of reminds me of doodling. You could be talking to somebody on the phone. You could be talking to a YouTube audience, let's say, hypothetically, while making a video. And your brain can just sort of drift off as you make these patterns. And I think you can see little by little how I could fill up this entire page. And indeed, that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to pull the camera back, and you're going to see me cover the entire sheet of paper in time-lapse. And then I'm going to come back and do the actual origami lesson, which is going to be showing you how to make a star-shaped box, a box that can actually be used as a real container. So hold on, I'm going to refocus the camera. You're going to see me finish off this pattern. And then we'll be back for the little origami lesson. Well, I've completed my pattern here, and I hope if some of you try this, you will find, as I do, that there's a real satisfying feeling when you complete this. It's a little bit like playing Tetris or something, you know, as you fill in every last gap. Something just pleasing to the eye and pleasing to the spirit, almost. Now, what I'm going to do now, strangely enough, is to switch this piece of paper for an ordinary white sheet of paper. The reason I'm doing this is because I think this video should be usable by people who have never really tried origami before. And that's why I want to keep it real clear, you know, with a clean white sheet of paper. These instructions will be as clear as possible. Now, happily, the first thing we're going to do is just fold it exactly on that first line. If you had taken a sheet of paper to create the square, you've already got that line done. It's super easy to do. Then we go across like this, taking this point to the other, and it becomes a kind of a triangle. Hopefully that is very easily done and easy to follow from the first one. Now this next bit becomes a bit tricky, and if you've never done it before, you may find it a bit of a challenge. But if you get this so that the opening is pointing down, sort of like a triangle that's pointing down, and you raise this up, what you need to do is put your finger into this opening here and sort of try to coax it down so that it begins to flatten out a little bit, right? Now you may have to push your finger way into that tip. And you hold this down because you don't want it all opening up and getting out of control. You hold this down, push your finger all the way in there, and then it starts to come down, almost like a bird's beak, right? And if you can get this point to come right down here, you should be able to flatten. I would advise starting at the point and kind of holding this down as you flatten like this, and you create a kind of perfect square out of that triangular section. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and do this a second time, real time. I'll flip the whole thing over. I find that it's very important to take this, when you get it to the other side, push this all the way over here, just as a preliminary creasing technique, so that you can get this to sort of flop back and forth. And then we are really doing exactly the same thing. Get your finger all the way in there, if you can, all the way to the point. I think it'll help you. And then you push this all the way down like so. Those of you who have done origami before, you may be like, oh, dude, why are you taking so much time with this? That's so easy. Well, you know, imagine that you had never done it before. I still remember when I tried to do origami for the first time, and I struggled a lot with every one of these things. So now we're going to take this, and be careful that you've got this opening part pointing down. And we're going to fold in like so. You've got this line right up the middle, a sort of a vertical line, and you're trying your best to line this up so that it follows that line exactly. And then you fold it down and crease as best you can so as to get that line. Hang on, I'm going to refocus the camera so we get a little closer in on this. Okay, so you saw how I did that. I folded that up to there. We're going to do the exact same thing here, and you're going to get into a lot of repetitions starting now, where we do the same thing 4 times for a lot of these moves. Those of you who have done the paper crane, you may notice that the first part of this is pretty much identical to the paper crane. Let's go ahead and I'm going to actually flip it over so that we do this, all of these at once. We're going to do all 4 of these quite similar folds all at the same time, and you end up with a sort of a kite-shaped piece of paper. And I would say the more precise you can be with every one of these folds, you will be rewarded with a more perfect origami box at the end of the process. So patience is rewarded. Alright, so you've got both sides now with these 2 flaps. Like I said, it makes sort of like a kite shape. Even if you flip it over, you're going to have the same thing on both sides. And here comes a tricky thing that's a little bit like that opening thing that we did earlier. I'm going to take this part, stand it up a bit, open and push the finger all the way in so as to flatten this down. It sort of feels a little bit like a repetition of what we did before, except because of the shape of the paper, it becomes a different shape right here. And this becomes kind of like a kite shape. You're lining this central line up with this. You know, these two lines get exactly together, and that's how you'll end up with that shape. Hang on, I'm going to do this again over here. It's going to be the same kind of a deal, right? You'd folded it in, then you pop it up, stick your finger all the way in there, and that helps you flatten it down. Get those two lines together, and then you basically just sort of squish it down until you've got the whole thing flat. I'm going to go ahead real time. I'm going to do the same thing on this side, except I'm going to do it faster. If you are struggling with this part, go ahead and pause the video, reverse it, and you can watch me doing it more slowly with all the explanations a minute or so earlier. But, you know, people who get good at origami, they're flying through these steps, almost like when you make a paper airplane or something. Alright, so now you've got this looking exactly the same on both sides. And what you want to do is take one of the two sides, this really should be super easy, and just fold it all the way over. So that all of that stuff is on the other side there and you can't see it anymore. And let's just go ahead and flip the entire thing over. And you'll find, if you do it that way, that you've got this over on this side, and you're going to do the exact same thing. Just fold it all the way over so that you have a much more plain looking surface on both sides now, right? And that's where you, and this should be pretty easy too. You're just following that line. You're going to fold this back over here, and we are indeed going to end up with yet another sort of kite shape there. As you fold, you take that, you fold both of them into the center line. All of these sort of feel very pre-folded by this stage, so it should be quite easy for you to fold it very precisely because the crease is already there. And we're getting closer now to the actual box part. I'm going to flip it over so that you can start to see the box as it, you know, the star-shaped box as it comes together. Now, one thing I'm going to do, and this is not in all of the steps that they show you, I'm going to do a sort of a pre-fold here. This is where you fold and unfold it again, just to create a kind of a creased line there. All right? And this is to help me later on when I try to make the box. I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to actually do the exact same thing on this side. Again, unfolding it. The whole purpose of it is to just get this section of the paper pre-folded and really flexible and easy to crease later on when you need to. I'm doing it over and over again so that it's, you know, the paper almost has the memory of that crease right there. It's going to make things easier later. You could skip that whole step if you want to, but you're not going to be able to skip this step. Now you've got the openings, because I turned it upside down. You've got the openings at the top. You fold this down, all the way down, and there's sort of a natural pull here where you can't fold it any farther. And that's where you just stop, and you flatten it, and you crease. Okay? And you'll end up with just a little gap there, if you've done it right. I'm going to flip the entire thing over and do the exact same thing. Pulling this down until there's that tension there where it can't be folded anymore. And then you just flatten it. And then this is another one of these things where just to keep repeating the step, we have to open this up, right? Just open this up over here, and then one more time. Like I said, there's a lot of these steps that you do 4 times. This is the third of the 4 times, pulling this down. And then to get to that one, I just have to go 1, 2, open that up again, and then pull this all the way down. Then you've got the 4th and final of those folds, and really the final, almost the final fold of the entire process. But I'm going to open this just one more time back over here. And this is where we get to the stage of the actual box. Now this could be tricky, and I'm going to try to take this slow for you guys, but what you're doing is you're opening up so that, you know, that interior space becomes kind of square shaped. And this is where I think if you've done the pre-fold that I tried to do down here, that can be helpful as you try to open this up and push that out, right? And then try to push it out on all four sides. This part here, right? And you're sort of reversing the paper. I hope you can see how I did that, you know. And reversing on 1, 2, 3, 4 sides, and there you have it. You have created the magical origami star-shaped box. Now, I did this with plain white paper, just hoping that that would make the whole instructional aspect easier, because the folds wouldn't become camouflaged by the pattern. But now I'm going to go back, take my patterned paper, and the one thing that I want to tell you at the outset, if you have two sides, you know, with the marker, this is the sort of less patterned side compared to the more deeply patterned side. If you want the interior to have the rich color, then you would fold like this as your first fold. If you want the exterior to have more of the rich coloring, I believe you would fold like so. I'm going to try doing it that way. I hope I've got that right. I may find that I'm wrong about which one you begin with, but I do believe that this will end up having the color on the exterior. What you'll end up with, though, is that these flaps that come from the interior will not be very brightly colored. They'll be a little more muted. So it's up to you, whichever look you prefer. I'm going to do this all in time-lapse because I've already done it. I've shown you the steps. I'm going to turn this one into the box, and we'll see what it looks like when I complete the process. Okay, so I thought I'd do this last part real time. Having put all those creases in there, I should hopefully be able to open it up, reverse that fold on all four sides, and create for myself a nice little origami box. And what I like about this is it is one of those rare origami projects that becomes a practical, usable item. You know what I mean? Let's say you had a bunch of paper clips and you didn't have anything to put them in. You fold up one of these. Well, hang on, I'll grab some paper clips and show you how it just might work out. Alright, so here we go. We got some dark blue and purple paper clips that I happen to have lying around, and oh, what a hassle it is to not have any. But wait a minute, I've got a box. I'll just keep them in here. So there you go. An actual practical use for this origami box. I can imagine someone using this even for, let's say you had a bag of pistachios at a party or whatever, and you want to get rid of the shells. How cool would it be if you were able to fold this box together as a practical way of tossing in those pistachio shells? But I want to wind this one down by saying thank you to anyone who has supported me by getting any of my books, like the Drawing Lesson, my graphic novel that teaches you how to draw, the Chibi book about drawing in a Chibi style. This one has a lot of craft projects, no origami necessarily, but for those of you who love craft projects, I think you would enjoy Chibi. And of course, my most popular book series, the Mastering Manga 1, 2, and 3. I really cannot say thank you enough to any of you who choose to support me by picking up that book or any of those books. I do think, though, that it's time for me to lay down one of these markers so that I can say thank you once again for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I'll be back with another one real soon.